Hey everyone, Mark the Movie Man here. It is that time, and yes, we're finally getting around to review the third installment in the Expendables franchise called, aptly, Expendables 3. Yes, brought to us by director Patrick Hughes, who gives us Barney and company going on a mission after they rescue one of the Expendables who's been trapped in a prison for a very long time, one of the original Expendables. They go on a mission, and they end up crossing paths with a man who Barney thought was dead, one of the co-founders of the original Expendables, Mr. General Stonebanks, who is now a gun runner and a very, very nasty guy. He's being played by Mel Gibson. And we see Barney realizing that he may need some new blood in his Expendables to fight this threat. And so he 86s the old team to get a new team to try to fight Stonebanks. But then he realizes he needs both teams, old school and new school, to fight this new threat in the form of Stonebanks and Stonebanks' army. Oh, wow, Expendables 3. Now, when I heard they were doing this and saw just what people they were putting into it, I got jazzed. All right, I was like, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. This is an awful lot of people, though, and that had me worried. Well, the volume of people, known names in this film, they did actually handle that very well. They gave people each something to do. They didn't feel like they were just throwing cameos, and the new additions to the cast were very much welcome. We've got Wesley Snipes in here, who I loved when he did his action films, and it was great seeing him back on screen in form, doing playing this character Doc, who was this great kind of crazy character who also kicked some major ass, and I just loved that character. He was a nice, refreshing addition to the Expendables group, added another layer in it, and I just loved his performance in general because I really enjoy Wesley Snipes' performances in action films, so it was great to see him on screen. Another great addition was Antonio Banderas as Galgo, this kind of annoying, very hyper-talking character who is very humorous. Okay, he gets a lot of the humor in the film, and that's because Antonio Banderas not only can do action really well, he can do humor very well. And where you think maybe his character was there for comic relief, when it gets down to brass tacks and he has to fight, you see why he's there, because he kicks some major ass, okay? So Antonio Banderas and Wesley Snipes, two additions to the Expendables, which were very much welcome. And what we got in here as well is some additional characters who aren't Expendables, but just ones that have been in action films and such before. We have Harrison Ford in here, who shows us that he can still do angry and can still do some action, and he plays his character to the hilt. We got Kelsey Grammer in here, who was the biggest question mark when they said they were going to add him to this action film. I'm like, Kelsey Grammer doing action? I mean, kind of, but I'm like, why? But his character is Bonaparte, serves a purpose, a very important purpose, actually, and the chemistry, the dialogue that he gets to have with Sly Stallone's character, Barney, as they're looking for new members of the Expendables, was well written and felt like they did have that history there. Yeah, so we've got that, and then there's Mel Gibson eating up every scene as the villain Stonebanks, reminding us what made him great in the 80s and 90s was those kind of anti-heroes, but, well, in this case, he's a villain, but, those crazy characters, those smart but crazy, those guys who could kick ass and also just off-the-wall nuts, and he does that so well, and it was just great seeing Mel Gibson in fine form, really reminded me of his character from Lethal Weapon. Now, the music was interesting as well, because in the beginning we get more of the original, the old-schooler action guys together, and the music is sounding more old-school action film-like. Okay, but then when we get into the new members of the Expendables going on a mission, the music changes tone and it sounds more like modern action music. So I loved how they played with the music as well, with the different crews that were involved in the case, depending on who was on the screen. So the action scenes I didn't have a problem with, and the characters I didn't have a problem with, but it's the overall story. Let's face it, folks, in number 2, near the end, it got really over the top, okay? And I enjoyed 2, don't get me wrong, but it got a little bit too much with the one-liners, a little bit too much over excessive in some things. And this one, they didn't do as much. This was handled more as a modern action film than an 80s action film, I thought. The opening, don't get me wrong, the opening of this film, the first 5-10 minutes of this film felt like old school kind of cheesy action film. I'm like, all right. And then the rest of the film, not so much. And that's probably because Crichton Rothenberger and Catherine Benedict have not written much. They wrote Olympus Has Fallen, which was a modern action film. And they wrote this one kind of like a modern action film, which is not what you wanted when you got all these old school action heroes in here, all these action hero actors in here, okay? So that's main thing where I think it was lacking is in the script with some of the dialogue they did, but especially the script, okay? Some scenes of the dialogue, like I said, with Kelsey and with Sly Stallone, really good, and there's some great moments in here. But still, it didn't feel like that old school action film like the other two did. And maybe it was them trying something different, but that's not what we wanted when you get all these guys together. They do set it up well to where if all the old schooler action guys wanted to drop out of the film, the new blood could take over. I did like all the new additions as far as Ronda Rousey, Victor Ortiz, Kellen Lutz in here as their characters, coming around. I did enjoy them and thought, yeah, I could see them doing their own spin-off type of series. But still, it just wanted old school, not new school. And another thing needed to be old school was the PG-13. Gone. Should have done rated R. Sorry, folks, really. These guys are the guys we grew up with in the rated R action films. The blood, the grittiness of the battle, okay? The little bit of excessive violence in there as well. Okay, all these things they did have those elements in the first two, and in the second one, they went a little bit overboard. This one, not quite so much. In fact, they could have upped the level just a little bit. At least give us some more one-liners, which we really didn't get in this film. It was more of a modern action film. I gotta give Expendables 3 2 3/4 stubs. Not quite 3 in my book, not quite worth the price of a full admission. Maybe a matinee, or as I saw it, on $5 Tuesdays. Then I could see you going to Expendables and not feeling like your money was wasted. But I think this film could have been just so much more with different screenplay than what they had. Now, Sylvester Stallone did have some input in it, but you could tell really there was that more modern influence in here. And maybe they're trying to transition it to more modern action films, which I really think is a mistake, because with a talented cast like this, you wanted old school, because that's the school they're from, and that's the school that at least your target audience loves. And that'll about do it for us here at the Final Cut. If you saw Expendables 3, please leave your comment down below. Love to hear your thoughts on PG versus R with Expendables 3. And don't forget to subscribe and let other people know about our channel if you enjoyed the review. And if you want to see a film reviewed on the channel, let me know as well. Please comment down below. And as always, folks, remember, keep that ticket stub.